And
Hello.
welcome everyone to day two of the Champions Chess Tour. My bad, Fiona. I'm Grandmaster Benjamin Bach. I'm delighted to be joined here by Women's International Master Fiona Stel Antone. Fiona, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. As you can see, I'm a little over-eager. Maybe it's good to be back. Good to have you here, Benjamin. This is indeed day two. Yesterday, unfortunately, did not go Hikaru's way in the interview. He talked about, just it's been such a busy period. He's feeling a bit burnt out. So we'll see what happens today. In this Division 1, there is no easy opponents. He's taking on Anish Giri today, a player you know well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, of course, I know Anisha. He's the number one player in the Netherlands. And yeah, you were saying there are no easy players in Division 1. That is, of course, true. But, I mean, yesterday he did get the toughest player in the field. He played Magnus Carlsen. So the fact that he lost, it can happen. And I think he's got a great chance to come back today. We're already a little bit past the hour, Fiona, but I still do not see the games.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, it looks like the games have not started just yet. They should start any moment now. Meanwhile, while we wait for the games to start, maybe you can tell us a bit about what do you expect from today's match between Hikaru and Anish?
Yeah, it's really a clash of styles. I know that Anish, he takes these very seriously. He prepares a lot. Hikaru, of course, he takes it serious as well, but sometimes he jumps around a little bit in the opening. He's freestyling a little bit. So I'm really curious to see how Hikaru is going to approach the opening. And from Giri, we can expect principal chess, I think.
Yeah, Giri yesterday, I have to say, I didn't really check the games of his match. He lost to Jan Nepomniachtchi. But I saw online that one of Anish's problems was that he spent a lot of time. That's an easy thing to do when you're playing against Nepomniachtchi, one of the fastest players on the circuit. Do you think this is something that Anish needs to watch out for today?
Yeah, no, for sure. We're playing rapid chess. They play with a time control of 15 minutes plus a 30-second increment. So that is quite a decent amount of time, but 3 seconds is not a whole lot of time for the increment. So he really has to be careful not to get too low on the clock because Hikaru will find a way to punish him.
Absolutely. As you say, 15 plus 3. I mean, yesterday was the first time I commented on this time control in a really long time. And I was surprised, one moment we're looking at the opening moves and then you blink and suddenly the players are down to 5 minutes. It's a blitz game. So 15 plus 3, I think it's a tricky time control because when you start out, you feel like you have quite a lot of time, but then suddenly having only a 3-second increment, it's more than in the SCC where you get 1 second, but it's not a whole lot. So we'll see. Hikaru today, he's brought out another of the Hawaiian shirts. I think the games still haven't started. We see Hikaru there typing away, both players looking fairly relaxed. I think, it's always, I think those are the most annoying moments when you're ready to go and you're just sitting there waiting. We see Hikaru taking a sip of coffee, tea, I don't know, but yeah, the players just waiting to get started here. And yeah, Anish, I don't know, was Anish, I was wondering this yesterday since we have a bit of time to fill until they get started. Wasn't Anish originally scheduled to play in the Levitov week or?
It's a good question. I think for some reason, yeah, he was going to play and then he was not. I don't think the fact that he qualified to this event made a difference from that perspective. I think for whatever reason, he decided not to play. And yeah, we see Hikaru a little bit relaxed. Now we see Giri on the screen. He looks a little bit more, I mean, I wouldn't not nervous, but a little bit more intense or a little bit uptight, so to speak. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like these moments before the game, like you feel the butterflies. You just want to get the games started. And sometimes you feel a little bit more anxious than actually during the game.
Yeah, and well, Hikaru talked yesterday about feeling burnt out. I'm sure Anish must be pretty tired because he very recently became a father for the third time.
Right.
So living with a newborn, I'm not speaking from experience, but I certainly know that it must be very tough. So maybe some of that tiredness, you don't know, there might be a baby screaming in the background there. But yeah, Anish, I think like Hikaru, he's also looking at a very busy upcoming period. In just a few days now, the European Club Cup will start. I don't know if Anish is actually playing in that. Maybe not, but I think he is playing in the Grand Swiss, which for a lot of these players, Hikaru will be there. I think Anish will be there. That will be one of the last opportunities to qualify for next year's candidates tournament. And well, the board is here at least.
We have the game. And Fiona, before we get started, how do you think Hikaru is going to start the game? Like what I wanted to get this question in earlier.
I think he'll go 1v3 maybe.
Yeah, we see d5 by Anish, a very principled approach. Bishop b2 by Hikaru. And I expected Anish will go for the setup. Oh, no, he doesn't. I was going to say he was going to go bishop f5 and e6, very solid. But instead he goes c5, and now it turns into a bit of a reversed Queen's Indian after the move knight f3. Hikaru has a lot of experience here, and also he won some nice games against MVL in the SCC. So I like this opening approach by him.
Yeah, just, sidestepping any big theoretical discussions. Anish, Hikaru always talks about how streaming is his main job. Anish is very much a full-time professional player. He's one of the best prepared players on the turf. So I think it makes a lot of sense to not challenge him, in the most demanding theoretical lines. What do you make of this f4 move?
Yeah, f4, quite an ambitious move by Hikaru, grabbing some more space, and he goes bishop to b5. Okay, so I expect now he's going to trade on d7. I'm a little bit surprised by this whole opening approach, and perhaps he wants to, make a little bit of a joke. Anish is Dutch, so he wants to play a bit of a reverse Dutch here.
Mm-hmm. That does make sense. Play some mind games. We see a knight here coming to f3. That knight will probably make its way to e5 at some point. I'm a little bit curious. What is it, do you think, that the engine doesn't really like about Hikaru's opening choice and developing?
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of this pawn on f4. It's kind of embarrassing, like the Dutch people, we pretty much got one of the worst openings of all, the Dutch. And I think that's why it's giving Black a pretty significant advantage here. I think Anish can just go knight c6. He can. The good thing for Hikaru is that he's firmly controlling these squares. Like, it's going to be very difficult for Black to ever go e5. In the case of d4, White just goes e4 and gets a majority on the king side. And Hikaru likes these king side majorities. He can then try to launch some sort of attack on that side of the board.
Yeah, so, well, we see Anish play knight c6. Hikaru is thinking, he is just gonna castle kingside, right? I was wondering,
yes.
Is there any craziness possible, but surely not.
No, because also Anish has a majority on this side of the board. So if you go queenside castles, you're going to run into a very quick a5, a4, or like b5 and c4. It's really asking for way too much. And in the meantime, it's going to be difficult for White to launch any sort of attack on the king side. So I think Hikaru is just going to castle kingside. And I'm also somewhat surprised by the fact that the engine really seems to like Black this much.
Yeah, I have to say, in this last move, we saw the bar drop a bit more. And I see the engine is advocating for Black to play d4. I was with you. I thought d4 is just going to met by e4 when White gets a nice center. And, well, this is exactly what's on the board. I guess the downside is that now the bishop on b2 is out of the game.
Yeah, the bishop on b2 is out of the game, like you said, and b5, a nice move by Anish, taking away that c4 square. And so Hikaru is a little bit cramped here. It's difficult to see how he's going to bring the bishop in. He goes kingside castles, and Anish now could also go knight g4 and plant that knight on e3, and it's going to be difficult for Hikaru to get rid of it.
And that's what he goes for, targeting that e3 square. I wonder, if you were White here, how annoying would you find this position? You already mentioned you're not a fan of f4. Now we see one of the drawbacks of pushing the pawn forward 2 squares. That pawn, when it was back on f2, was keeping an eye on e3. So yeah, how would you feel if you had to play this position from the White side? Would you feel it's really quite bad, or would you just think, oh, it's a game, let's say?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too thrilled. It feels like white doesn't have any advantage whatsoever. So this is what I was saying before the match, right? Like how it's really a clash of styles. Hikaru, he like again, he's freestyling a little bit in the opening, whereas Anish is a player who really wants an advantage out of the opening, right? Hikaru, he's happy to, just keep pieces on the board. But, I think there's nothing wrong with that approach. But ideally, then you want to get a position that is at least equal, so to speak, right? Here, he's significantly worse. I do like his move rook f1, so now he can meet knight e3 with knight f1 and trade off the knights very quickly. But perhaps Anish can try to strike in the center quickly with moves like e5 or maybe e5 as well.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at e5, which looks quite interesting here.
So let's say e5 is played here by Anish. Hikaru could decide to sack a pawn, but I don't know if it gives him... I mean, he does get the e4 square for his knight. His bishop can come back into the game. I don't know. It all looks a little bit dodgy. I mean, if you're Anish here, what you would love to do is, let's say, go rook a8 and then f5, and then his space advantage becomes really felt.
Yeah, if you're white here, I mean, do you want to meet e5 by capturing? Can you... Is f5 a pawn sacrifice, or can we...
No, I mean, we can take the black and just recapture.
Yeah.
To be fair, perhaps this would alleviate some of the pressure for white, as we have less space.
And yeah, what I was wondering is if we push f5 instead, is that a pawn sacrifice after if e5 was played, which it wasn't. But yeah, let's just follow the game. So e5 now. Oof.
Okay, Hikaru decides to take. So again, he wants to trade off some pieces and alleviate the pressure. I like this move, bishop h6 by Anish, attacking the pawn on f4, provoking a little weakness here on Hikaru's king side. So now let's see what Anish is going to do. It feels like Hikaru is a little bit tied up here. It's difficult for him to move. But again, after a trade, that would make it easier for him to play.
Yeah, I guess black is going to try and argue I don't have to recapture that pawn. As you said, black has the space advantage. Black has the more active pieces. So I think black can absolutely get away with not recapturing the pawn immediately, especially since it's going to be impossible for white to hold on to that pawn. So you can always recapture it at a later moment. I was wondering if bishop e3 check is anything. Okay, the computer gives this as a miss. I was wondering if the knight can somehow jump into f2, but I didn't really see a follow-up. So for now, Anish just continues activating his pieces.
Yeah, I like rook a8. The pawn on e5 is not going anywhere, right? It's cut off from white's chain, and so Anish improves another piece before capturing it. And again, after he takes here, I'm sure he's looking at the move f5 to really bring all of his pieces into the game. So now let's see what Hikaru is going to do. I don't like the position, but we know what a resilient defender he is. Maybe a move like bishop to c1, preparing to bring that bishop back into the game after the knight moves, let's say here. Bishop a3, a possibility as well, taking this pawn, because you don't really want to go b4 as black, which would give white this c4 square for the knight. So let's see what Hikaru is going to do. He's got a very small time advantage, but the opening is definitely for Anish.
Absolutely. I kind of like bishop a3 hitting that pawn on c5. As you said, black really doesn't want to play b4, so I guess black will be forced to play queen e7 to defend the pawn.
Yeah, queen e7 looks like a nice move, defending the pawn. And then, yeah, you're going to take on e5 in the next couple of moves.
Yeah, it's a tricky position, though, because bishop a3 is a move, but it's only one move. The question for black is, how are you going to free up your position in the long term? In general, often we do that by looking for pawn breaks. It's tricky here because you can't play c3, I don't think, because your pawn on d3 is gonna become a weakness. So if you're white, really what you want to do is, I think you want to trade pieces, as you were mentioning earlier. When you have less space, you're happy to trade pieces. But how do we do that here? What do you think the plan is going to be in the long term?
I don't know. It's tough. Maybe a move like a4, attacking the pawn on b5, and again trying to carve out that c4 square for the knight. However, I mean, if you go a4, black also can go knight b4, taking this pawn over here, and you no longer have a good way to kick that knight away with the move a3. So it's a possibility. Hikaru for sure is looking at it. Perhaps he wants to meet knight b4 with a move like knight to f1. And then again, if you can take, you're doing pretty all right. But perhaps Anish just goes a6, maybe take a like bishop a3. Perhaps that's something that could be considered. So let's see what he's going to do here. And Hikaru now is also falling behind on the clock.
Yeah, he's really gone into the tank here. I wonder what the moves are. Surely he's considering bishop a3. He's also considering, I'm sure, a4. Because I'm looking at the other pieces. I mean, the knight from f3 really wants to stay there, I think, so that when black takes on e5, you can recapture. And the other knight on d2, I think, also wants to stay there, because after black recaptures and you take, that one knight wants to replace the other knight on f3. So I'm slightly surprised that Hikaru has not made a move yet. There he goes, plays a4, and we see both players here, the computer not approving.
Yeah, a4, a move that we discussed, and perhaps Anish should have gone for the move knight b4, taking that pawn on c2, which is all of a sudden quite awkward to protect. But he made a standard reaction, he played the move a6. I like the fact that now Hikaru has this open file for his rook, though.
Yeah, the rook on a1, I think, is the only active piece in his position right now, but it's better to have one active piece than none. So on the next move, we might imagine, we might see the rook, I was gonna say, come into a6. That's actually not a threat, because it runs into this move you're talking about, knight b4. So this point on c2 is something that we still need to keep an eye on. Is bishop a3 here a move again? Just again asking black how he's going to defend c5.
It definitely was a move, but Hikaru goes another route. He plays bishop to c1, also makes a lot of sense. He's preparing for you, and Anish to trade, and then he wants to go knight f3. I think there white is doing okay. Like, the worst is probably behind him. He's trading off a lot of pieces. I think Anish has to try to find a way to keep a little bit more pieces on the board, but let's see how he's going to do. So one mistake that Anish sometimes makes in these kind of spots is that he feels like, hey, I'm playing with the black piece, I'm playing against Hikaru, a very strong player, obviously, and sometimes he's a little bit too timid. So let's see if he can deviate from that normal tendency, and if he can play a little bit more aggressively here.
Yeah, I was just looking at whether I can somehow bring one knight to b4 and one knight to e3. I was thinking maybe c2 becomes difficult to defend, but I think regardless of which knight I move first, let's say I play knight b4 first, I guess white's idea, Hikaru's idea, is that he's going to move this knight, and now now the other knight cannot jump into e3 any longer, and if you jump into e3 first rather than playing knight b4, I guess that's met with the same knight f1, and you don't have time to bring the other knight to b4.
Yeah, no, for sure. He aims to play knight f1, defend this pawn on c2, and also trade off some pieces. So now we see Anish in the tank. He knows, of course, that he has an advantage, and something like knight takes c5 is pretty safe, but I'm sure he knows that there must be something more. But also it's not easy. I don't see what exactly he should do here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think those spots are tough, because as you say, I'm also sure Anish knows he's better, but at the same time, he also knows these positions. If you don't play, in the most active way, it's an advantage that can disappear very quickly. So I think it actually makes sense for Anish to spend time here. Let me ask you about the top computer recommendation here, which is f5. What is that about?
Yeah, f5, I think that's a move that's very difficult to make, because after playing the move e5, Anish knows that he's always going to regain that e-pawn, right? So if he goes f5, now white can take en passant. And yes, black gets tremendous compensation after rook takes f6, as white's pieces are still completely tied up, right? But here, white does have a very, very solid extra pawn. So I'd be surprised if Anish goes for it. Instead, he goes bishop to e3 check. So let's see where Hikaru is going to go with the king. I would think, he's played king g2, knight f2, threatening to say hello with the queen, and so Hikaru jumps back with knight at g1. But I think now is a good time for Anish to pick up the pawn on e5.
Yeah, and that's what he does now that pawn is not defended by the knight any longer. Anish gets to recapture the pawn while at the same time avoiding trades. Hikaru's position is pretty precarious. I mean, everything is kind of holding on by a thread. That knight really needs to stay on g1 to stop the queen from coming in. On the other hand, let me ask you, if it were black to move again, does black have a threat right now?
I think black would just love to go f5 and blast open the king side. I mean, that looks devastating. So we see knight f1 by Hikaru, forcing the trade of bishops, but what if Anish now just takes? Wait, like f5 hangs the knight, so perhaps after takes, maybe you have to move the knight first.
Let's take a look at that, actually. So if bishop takes e1, rook takes...
Yeah, this might, like, you kick the knight back, you can go to f6, but then you're blocking the f5 break, and you can go knight h6, but this looks a little bit passive. In the meantime, we see a trade on c1. Okay, now Hikaru has to recapture, and I'm sure he's going to do so with the a-rook, and there we have it.
Okay, and I think we have to look. As you guys can see, the eval bar is not happy at all. It says the position is actually losing for Hikaru if Anish finds f5, which is a piece sacrifice. So let's take a look at that.
Well, f5 would be a great move by Anish. So let's say we take the knight. Black takes an e4, and we go queen to... And f5 is on the board. Wow, what a find by Anish. He sacks the knight, double exclam.
Wow. Really nice move by Anish. And I think Anish, you know, I saw a lot of jokes in the chat about draw Anish and all that. And I think those jokes are just never, ever gonna go away. But Anish, you know, he's shown that he is still improving. He won Vaikanze this year, his home turf tournament. And he is a player to be reckoned with. He's fantastically strong. And I think f5 is one of these moves, you know, showing the naysayers like that he's not always going to go for safety. Let's take another look at what happens after queen takes f2.
Yeah, so I feel like we're gonna have to take the knight. If we don't take white, black takes on f5 or black takes on e4, and that just looks like a devastating attack for free. So I think we're gonna have to take black takes on e4. We're gonna have to move our queen. So let's say we go to e2, right? Apparently black takes on d3, and after we recapture, black plays knight g4, attacking the queen, and there's just too many threats. Like let's say you go queen c2, queen e5 looks crushing. I mean, everything is coming in, king h3. There's knight f2, so I think it's just kind of falling apart. That being said, what happens in case Hikaru goes queen d2, right? Like now after pawn takes d3, like knight g4 no longer comes with a tempo, so maybe this is what he has to go for. And I guess it looks bad, but I don't see a win for black just yet.
Yeah, I mean, he is down a piece. I'm shocked that this is so strong for black. So what happens if e3?
Yeah, I assume we're going to have to give up the knight, otherwise rook f2 comes in. So let's say we sack. Black takes, we recapture with the rook. And this check is nasty as... I mean, maybe there's king h3, but I'm really worried that I'm going to get checkmated somehow. And if we go rook e4, apparently this is crushing. Because if we take, there's this, and we cannot take. So we have more moves. Hikaru went down the line. He took the knight and played queen e2. So now let's see if Anish is going to play that move e3.
Yeah, Anish was actually, you know, I was talking before the match started that yesterday he was playing quite slowly, but he's actually the one who's up on the clock so far. You know, what can we say? Anish has just played really well. It was maybe not the best opening by Hikaru, but we see him play this, you know, so many times. We saw it against MVL, we saw against Karana. He gets away with this kind of stuff so often, and this, you know, it wasn't a knight h3 first move. It wasn't an opening that's just plain bad. But I think Anish just reacted perfectly, and right now it's not looking good. But it's not an easy path for Anish to victory here. We just looked at e3. I see we could also take. What happens if we take on d3? On takes.
There is always this check, but after king h3, I don't quite see a follow-up. Like the king for now is kind of safe here. In case of rook f5, maybe we go g4 and stop this check over here. So Anish must feel that there's something, right? You feel like there's something, but he can't quite put his finger on it, what exactly it is. And that's just so annoying when you're playing Hikaru. Like, you know there's got to be a win. He finds these only moves. He's hanging in there. And that's why we see Anish spending his time as well. But fortunately for him, he does have a decent amount of time to figure something out.
Oh my goodness, Benjamin, I just saw MasterChef's comment in the chat. Oh wait, it's only a 2-game match. I almost forgot.
Oh.
I actually forgot.
Yeah, I thought it was a 4-game match, but
Yeah,
like I said, it's only 2 games. So if you lose this game, Hikaru would be in a
really
terrible spot.
I genuinely had forgotten.
You know, see 3, Hikaru instantly snaps it off. Okay, so Anish can now give a check first. He can also take here. Either way, it's looking bad for Hikaru.
Yeah, this is not looking good. Anish finding all the best moves, and with this refresh, I mean, I knew it at the back of my mind yesterday that the losers bracket is 2-game matches, but I just sort of blanked on that this is actually the losers bracket. So Hikaru is gonna have to somehow try and survive, because beating Anish with the black pieces in the next game is gonna be a very tall order. Okay, so knight takes e3. Let's try and look for ways in which tempting moves for Anish that aren't good. Can we find any such moves?
Well, I think what's very tempting here for Anish is to spend a lot of time and look for a win and then not find it and then mess up in time pressure. So I think that's one thing we have to hope for. And for that to happen, we need some energy from the chat. We need some energy from the chat. Chat, send in your energy. Send it into Hikaru. He's in a tough spot right now, but we know what a fighter he is. So if you send in your energy, he might still be able to save this game. Like a draw here with white pieces would be a big, big result. And then there's still really all to play for.
Absolutely. Let's see that energy. I see the flower power is coming in here. And Anish is under the 5-minute mark now. Benjamin, I remember when we were doing commentary way back when, you know, I love to hear you say, use your prime. What can you say now on kick? How do you replace it? To get
There's
Anish
no prime,
time?
yeah. I would say, yeah, throw in your prime to get Anish low on time. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no kick prime just yet.
We need to come up with a new phrase. Chat, we need your help.
Throw in a sub to give Hikaru the dub. That's also one I use. It still applies here. So yeah, throw in a sub to give Hikaru the dub.
I like that one as well. Anish down to 4 minutes here. But he does play Queen c6 check, and the king has made his way out.
King h3 was pre-move. Do you make this up, Fiona? Wait, what? No, wait. Like it says it was played in 0.1 second, but had Anish taken on e3, he would have.
No, it couldn't be.
Did he really pre-move that? But it says 0.1 second. Oh, okay. Wait. Here's the thing, Fiona. When the king is on g2, if Anish takes here, king h3 is not a legal move.
Oh.
Right? But had Anish played knight g4, king h3 loses. Like knight g4, you pre-move king h3, and this is mate. So I don't know. Yeah, quite surprising about what Hikaru is doing. Now Anish recaptures, and we have this position. And once again, it looks super scary for white with this king on h3, but I don't think there's a win. Like rook f5, I think again g4, and for the moment we're hanging in there. So Anish right now repeats the position once, but how is he gonna deviate? Oh, Fiona, I've got an idea. Wait, does this just win? King g2, queen d5, king h3, and knight g4. I think this is crushing. If you take the knight, it's checkmate on 1, and if you take the rook, there's check and mate. And I think we're just lost here. I mean, yeah, knight g4, that's the end of the game. Yeah, and that's it. Hikaru just lost.
Yeah, this was a tough game, with Hikaru now being in a must-win situation in game 2. I mean, it's hard to say something about this game, because I think what we're seeing is really just Hikaru not, he talked about burnout. It's not me making up theories or excuses. I think he's been playing so much. He still has a busy calendar upcoming. So with 2 important over-the-board tournaments lined up in October, Qatar Masters and the Grand Swiss, of course, I hope Hikaru bounces back in game 2. But I also think maybe it's not the end of the world. He mentioned he's already qualified to the finals of the Champions Chess Tour in Toronto. So what is he playing for in this tournament? Yeah, he's playing for the prestige of winning it. and he's playing for the money. The money, I don't think he cares too much. And yeah, it would be nice to win the tournament, but it's not gonna change his life. So I do hope to see him bounce back, but I think if he doesn't, it's not the end of the world that he gets a few days off. I also saw yesterday, I think he tweeted that he might play the late title Tuesday today. What time is that up? That's in 2.5 hours? Is that right?
No, that's actually in 4.5 hours. So I don't know exactly. So if he wins today's match, that's the only match he has today, right? There's no match after this. In the meantime, we also have this game here between Firoza and Dennis Lazavik. I really like Firoza's position. He's also up 3 minutes on the clock, as everyone can see here. This bishop on a7 is kind of dead. It's blocked in by this pawn on c5. Firoza's got this rook on g3, which can create some real threats on the king side, and maybe move like bishop e3 here, pinning that f7 pawn and threatening rook takes g6.
Sorry, Benjamin. I'm so confused by the schedule of this tournament. I thought Magnus was also going to be playing. But are they playing later, the winner's bracket?
Yeah, I suppose they play later. Yeah, I suppose they play later, and I think they try to have one match at a time.
Okay. Very difficult to keep up these days. We talked about this yesterday, about how, this format, double elimination, I'm starting to wrap my head around, but this tournament here, it has Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. All divisions have a winner's bracket, a loser's bracket. So there's a lot going on, but yeah, let's take a look at this position where a lot of the white pieces are pointing towards the black king.
Exactly, yeah, queen h5 and bring in another piece. Now, I don't think there's a threat just yet, but after bishop e3, there will be a lot. And Dennis down to 3 minutes. So let's see what he's going to do. He cannot play knight f4, as that will run into queen takes h6, taking advantage of the pin along the g-file. But instead, he goes rook to d8, attacking this knight on d2. Now, perhaps Firoza is going to move it out of the way with a move like knight f3. But I wonder, can he also consider something like bishop e3? Because in case black takes, there's that move queen takes g6.
Yeah, really, really messy here. Bishop b3 looks very tempting. I think Alireza is in his element here. I was wondering how he was going to bounce back yesterday. I don't know if you saw his last game against MVL with the 4 queens on the board.
I didn't see that one, but I saw he lost the match.
Yeah, I mean, he was down. He was in a must-win situation in the last game. And he was losing for most of the game, and then we got into a queen endgame where both sides were pushing a pawn, and suddenly MVL lost the thread of that queen ending, and Alireza actually queened first, and then MVL queen, so there were now 4 queens on the board, and it was a first mate for Alireza. James and I thought that Alireza just misplayed because he was playing on seconds, but apparently it was a mouse slip by Alireza. He played one move that wasn't a check, and he was the one who ended up getting mated. So it was quite a tragic way to lose the match for Alireza, but it looks like he's ready here to bounce back. Lazavik just played king f8, stepping out of the pin along that diagonal, but it feels like there has to be something.
It feels like there's got to be something for Firoza. I mean, even after a move like knight f3, it looks really nice because he's got all of his pieces pointed towards the king side again. This bishop on a7 is kind of dead. This bishop on b5, it's semi-active, but it's not really doing too much on this diagonal. So, I mean, even a move like rook f3 could be considered, although I guess there's knight f4 to block. So let's see how Firoza is going to work his magic here and pull off the win.
Benjamin, I got sidetracked by the chat again. I see SFZ is saying, Fiona's great as long as she's not making bets about Anish's butt. Which reminds me, are you going to stream the late title Tuesday?
Perhaps I'm going to stream it on Kick, yeah.
If you do, speaking of the bet about Anish's butt, which was a bet between Benjamin and I all the way back in May, if you stream the late title Tuesday, I will pay up tonight.
Okay, no, that sounds good. That's definitely motivation for me to play. Yeah. Good.
So meanwhile, and Alireza still thinking here. I wonder also if Hikaru's second game is gonna start 10 minutes after his first game ended, or if it will start 10 minutes after this one ends. So many questions, so few answers. For now, let's try and figure out how Alireza wins this one.
Yeah, so let's see how Alireza is going to win this one. Also, I'm really curious to see what Hikaru is going to do to try to come back in the match. He has to win with the black pieces. So I expect Anish to play... Well, first of all, what do you expect from Anish? Do you expect him to play e4 or d4?
Well, I'm trying to think. I don't know. Does he play both similarly often, or is e4 his main?
Yeah, he can really play both. Now, I know that he's published a 1e4 course recently, so perhaps he will stick to e4. And I think he will play e4. And I think
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and I think Hikaru will play the modern, but yeah, go ahead. What do you?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I was just going to say that as well. I was wondering what is going through Anish's mind. You know, if I go e4, I think the modern, or maybe a Sicilian, but I feel like the modern would be probably the more combative choice, because the Sicilian, yes, it has a reputation for being a very aggressive response to 1e4, but if white doesn't want to go for the most aggressive lines, there is a lot of ways in which white can try to take the life out of the position. So I do think there's a good chance that we'll see a modern actually in the second game.
Yeah, and I think there's a very good chance Hikaru is going to play the modern. That's also what he played against Pragnananda in the World Cup when he was in a must-win situation, but it didn't really work out at all for him in that game. He quickly got into a position where Prag was just better without too much risk, so he's going to have to do something differently in this game. In the meantime, it looks like Alireza's crushing. He's just won a pawn, and now he's creating a bunch of threats. Knight h5 has just been played, but I think you just go rook g4, and you have a dominant position with white.
Rook g4, can black go bishop d7?
But maybe just rook h4 and attack the knight again, which is actually quite awkward to protect.
Yeah, that's a good point. I missed that square. I thought we were the one in an awkward spot, but I think that's the rook, problem.
Yeah, the rook is awkward there, but I don't see a way to actually trap it.
I was going to say, I think the basic problem with this position for Denis Lazavik is that he's playing a piece down, the bishop on a7. It's just doing nothing, and playing a piece down when all of white's pieces are so active, it's just not going to work. Black would need to play c6 and bishop b8 to try and, you know, exchange those pieces, but it's just taking too much time.
Yeah, rook d3 was a tricky move. He was hitting the bishop and the knight on f3, because if you take the knight, you can take the bishop on e5 afterwards. But of course, Alireza saw it coming and played the move rook e3. Now, he might have here, he will have to double his pawns in case Alireza takes, but like you said, he stays up a pawn. He also still has a dominant position because his bishop on a7 is cut out. And he can also go for a move like rook h4. And how do you deal with this knight? You might go knight f6, but then white can take and snap off another pawn. So it's looking great for Alireza, but that being said, it's not over just yet.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, we got confirmation that Hikaru's second game will start 10 minutes after this one ends. So Hikaru and Anish actually getting quite a long break. Do you think that Anish is looking at some lines right now?
Actually, you know, it's kind of funny. I'm in a group chat with the Dutch national team, and he is checking some lines. So that's of course I'm not gonna say like what or but like I know my yeah, he of course, yeah, I think he's checking some lines in between the games.
Okay, so and how do you think Hikaru is spending the time in between games?
Hikaru generally doesn't spend a whole lot of time checking lines in between the games, but let's see what he's gonna do.
So meanwhile, in this game, Lazavik has just played bishop e2, and well, there is a pawn hanging on c7, and I was just gonna say I don't really see a reason not to take it. So there he goes. Lazavik can now try to exchange the dark squared bishops. Maybe he will play bishop b8, but it doesn't solve the core of his problems, which remain, and he's now down 2 pawns, which is just a bit too much here.
Yeah, to be fair, after the king moves, he does have this attack on the rook and the bishop, so in case you go rook g3, perhaps he can take on e3, but Alireza can even take on b7, and that's what he goes for, sacking the exchange, because look at this position, Fiona. He's got, I don't know how many pawns, even like 3, and all of his pieces are just so dominant.
Yeah, and that c pawn is only 3 squares away from queen. It's gonna be quite tricky, actually, to stop it. I think bishop b5 does the trick. If the pawn now comes to c7, the bishop can drop back to d7, but yeah, Alireza just bringing more pieces, and it feels like this one's gonna be over very, very soon.
Yeah, so we see bishop d7 here by Dennis, hitting this pawn on g4, but it's all just a little bit too much. I mean, Alireza at some point can start pushing this pawn. He can also take on a6, start pushing all of the pawns on the king side, and that's actually what he goes for. He takes the a pawn.
Yeah, and all the pawns are dropping, and there's no way the 2 bishops and the rook can stop all of the white pawns on the queen side. Lazavik also down to 10 seconds, so it looks like he's also going to be in a must-win situation in game 2. And there they go.
Yeah, now the good thing for Dennis is that he will have the white pieces, so that gives him better chances for a comeback, but I do expect Alireza to win this one.
Yeah, Alireza, a huge favorite. So we are going to see, I think there's a 10-minute break now before the next game, so we are also gonna go on a short break. We'll see you on the other side of this. Don't go anywhere. We'll need all the energy you can muster up to cheer on Hikaru in order to come back against Anish, Giri.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Champions Chess Tour. Fiona, we just saw that Hikaru lost a pretty tough game with the white pieces, so now he's going to have to come back with black.
Yeah, coming back with black is always a tall order, especially when you're playing Anish, Giri. He's so well prepared. As we saw in game 1, he's such a, what's the word? Principled. I think he's such a principled player, you know. He, you never really see him do what Hikaru does, just experiment with openings. Like, he's always trying to play the best move, the most principled approach. So I'm very curious to see how Hikaru is going to try and unbalance this game. We talked about it a little bit before the break. I think both of us are thinking there is a good chance Anish will open 1e4 and Hikaru will play the modern, but we'll find out any moment now, as we can see the 2 players are ready for game 2. And yeah, remember, this is the losers bracket, so Hikaru does need a win here, otherwise he's out of this AI Cup.
Yeah, like I said, there's only 2 games, so he needs to win this game with the black pieces. So Anish is going to play either e4 and there we have it, e4. And now let's see what Hikaru is going to do. I mean, maybe a Sicilian, that would also make sense, but it's a little bit more theoretical. And I would very much understand it if he wants to avoid theoretical discussions, and there he goes for the modern.
Yeah, we called this one correctly. I think we're both commentating together that match against Prague. Oh no, was that with
it was with you were with Hammer, yeah.
With Hammer. That was a game where actually Hikaru went all out, but Prague played so well, something Hikaru said himself, to neutralize any counterplay. The modern, it is a double-edged position. You're not fighting for the center immediately. This right now could even become some kind of hippo if we see an e6, knight e7. So the idea here is, as you can see right now, Hikaru has not crossed the 6th rank as of yet. So the idea is to strike in the center later on.
Yeah, so he wants to, I mean, perhaps the e5, the drawback of the hippo is though that it's difficult to make any central pushes, as white will be better prepared for it because he has more space. So the annoying thing when you face the hippo is that black has these very easy moves, right? Black goes e6, knight e7, and then you're like, oh, what do I do now, right? And I kind of like what Anish is doing here. He goes for a very quick a5. Now the standard reaction here is the move b5, which is why you play a6 in the first place. But I assume Anish wants to meet that with the move c4 and nibble away at Hikaru's pawn structure right away.
Yeah, so as we were talking about, once again, I think just the most principled approach. When black plays the modern, black lets you take that space in the center if you want to do that. And Anish, well, he has a pawn on e4, he has a pawn on d4, he has a bishop on c3. The knight will probably come out to c3. So all white's moves are standard. I think when you're black, one of the most important things, and I think one of the things which makes it so tricky to play the modern when you're not super familiar with all the concepts and ideas, is that you really need the time you're striking in the center so well.
And we see Anish again going for a central push with a d5. In the last game, he went d5, d4 as black. So let's see, now he goes b4, expanding on the king side. Again, a very principled approach, 97 by Hikaru. But I like what Anish has done here. He's struck early on the queen side, and Hikaru is yet to develop any sort of counterplay on the king side and on the center. We see b5 right away by Anish. I think for now Hikaru can ignore this and maybe just go king side castles. The one thing that's annoying though, Fiona, is that we would love to play f5, right? But if you go f5 here, there's knight g5, so perhaps he has to play h6 first and only f5 later, and there we go.
That's exactly what he does. I thought giving a knight c3 an exclam was very generous there by chess.com. Knight c3. I think, you know, I was gonna say even but I think I'm giving myself too little credit. There's probably, I think, a lot of players even lower weight.
Even Chad could play
even Chad might have played knight c3 in that position. Sorry, Chad, don't take it personally. So
well,
h6,
you know,
maybe they should take it personally. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was gonna say they're also capable of finding moves like queen d4, but go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna return to the position as we said. h6 on the board. Hikaru wants to play f5 in the very near future. If you're white, can you stop the f5 break, or is that just something you have to deal with?
That's just something you're going to have to deal with. Yeah, there's no good way to stop it. You can anticipate it by going, let's say, 92 and meeting f5 with f3. That's certainly a possibility, because if Hikaru goes f5, this pawn on d4 becomes a little bit loose, and then the pawn on d5 also becomes a little bit loose. The one thing Hikaru has to watch out for is, let's say, in the event of bishop e3, f5, and let's say queen e2. It's actually difficult to play this move knight f6, because in case you go knight f6, I think white has this move knight takes e5, and if you take the knight, then there's d6 with a check. So I kind of like what Hikaru is doing. I think objectively, Anish might be doing quite well here, but all of the pieces, except for one pawn trade, are still on the board, and Hikaru is looking to strike quickly with this f5 move.
Yeah, and well, we see Anish decided to make the exchange on a6 and followed that up with queen e2. So black isn't ready to play f5 just yet. First, he has to deal with the bishop on a6. Is that, yeah, that is correct. So with that bishop on a6, what do you do? Do you want to take on c3?
Yeah, we can certainly trade. Oh, no worries. Yeah, we can certainly trade, but it does give the white queen a good spot. Like, the engine gives bishop c8 a question mark, but I kind of like it from a practical perspective. In case of bishop e7, the bishop would have always been hit with a tempo with a6, and now we're going to go f5 on the next move. Again, the evil bar here doesn't tell the entire story. All of the pieces besides for 2 pawns on both sides are still on the board. Hikaru is going to go f5 on the next move. Perhaps create some counterplay on the king side. Also, in the center with the knight f6, he's putting a lot of pressure on these 2 center pawns. And we see he's almost up 3 minutes on the clock. So I think, practically speaking, he's doing a perfect job so far.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is the kind of position where, if you're watching, don't rely too much on the evil bar, as you guys are putting it so well in the chat. Because I don't think the evil bar tells the whole story. I'm so bad at pronouncing evil anyway, like it always often comes out as evil. Anyway, it's not an easy position for white to, you know, find the cleanest path to maintaining the edge, and the waters can get muddied pretty quickly here. So I think in a sense, Hikaru will be happy with what he's gotten.
And Anish just pushes the pawn all the way up to a7. Hikaru did get in the move f5. So now let's see what he's gonna do. I think for Anish it does make sense to get the pawn here, as there could always be tactics to promote this pawn, push it all the way through. So now let's see what Hikaru is going to do. He can play a move like bishop e7 combined with knight b6, again increasing the pressure on white center, but white can always play the move bishop e3 to defend this pawn a little bit more. So yeah, again, objectively, it might not be an easy position here for Hikaru, but again, practically all of the pieces are still on the board, and he goes for g5. Wow, he's just pushing everything on the king side.
Yeah, he's really going all out here. G5, the computer again doesn't approve, but I think we should just pretty much discard the eval bar. For example, the top move the engine gives here for white as a move, I think is very difficult to spot. Rook a3. Rook a3, what's even the idea? That you want to defend along the third rank as well? Or why? What's Rook a3 about?
Yeah, Rook a3 is a pretty, it's often a move in King's Indian type of positions where you do defend along the third rank. It often comes in very useful. And again, Fiona, I think like the evil, the bar's evil, I mean, let's just put it the way it is not telling the whole story. Hikaru is creating a lot of tension here. Also, he's up 4 minutes on the clock. And for Giri, like for Anish, you would love to find a way to trade off some pieces, take the game into a very safe position, but there doesn't seem to be a very easy way to do so, and he goes for your move rook to a3.
I'm really impressed by that. I didn't think it was going to happen in a million years. If I'm black now, how do I continue the attack? If it was me, I would probably just go f4, try and maybe something like f4, knight g6, h5, and then g4. The reason I can't go h5 immediately is because the pawn on g5 would be hanging. How would you continue the attack?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, I think you want to be a little bit careful as to when you execute these pawn pushes. You don't quite want to trade on e4. It gives white a very stable knight on e4. f4 is possible as well, but I think you want to, again, time that correctly. If you go f4 too quickly, you can go g4 right after, but how are you exactly going to launch your attack, right? And again, I think that this rook on a3 certainly helps with Anish's defense. So now we see Hikaru taking a little bit of time. I'm sure he would love to play a move like knight f6, but I think for the moment it runs into the tactic with knight c5 and d6.
Let's maybe just show that on the board for those that are not rated 3000 in the chat.
Yeah, and even though the material remains even, this significantly helps white's chances. As the position opens up, also makes it easier for white to potentially attack this rook on a8, and black center becomes extremely loose. So this is not what Hikaru wants to do. So the question is, what does he do instead? Maybe just f4, maybe just go all in, just push p on the king side.
Yeah, f4, as I said, is, I think, what I would play. I don't know if that's, a good thing or a bad thing. But I feel, okay, if you push, you have to get the pawns going. I think pushing g4 first doesn't work so well. So I would probably go f4. And then, as I said, maybe knight g6 to defend the pawn on g5. And then follow up with h5 and g4 and just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, and I think you're just gonna have to go for the f4. Yeah, like I said, g4, knight g6, just push everything forward. But the King's Indian is often a race, right? Like who strikes first, and it does feel for the moment that Anish is the first one to create a real play on the queen side, right? Whereas Hikaru, I mean, he can go f4, he can go g4, but there's still a lot of work to be done. That being said, though, if Hikaru can break through, the price will be higher as he will get to the enemy king, whereas maybe Anish gets, let's say, this rook, or he gets a queen on the king side. So that is always the coin flip that the King's Indian really is.
Yeah, and well, we see Hikaru actually take a lot of time here. He must be figuring out what the best way is to push the pawns, because if you're not pushing the pawns, as you said, you'd like to play knight f6, you can't, so he does go for f4 in the end.
Yeah, f4. I think a good decision. He's just pushing everything forward on the king side. And here we see the move h3 by Anish. A very interesting decision. I think what he wants to do is he wants to firmly stop that g4 push by going knight h2 and yeah, making sure that it's just not possible. Also, perhaps what he could do is maybe go like queen d1 and bishop e2. That being said, if you play all of those moves, that's also a little bit passive. It's going to make it more difficult to go for your own play on the queen side. But h3, it is a double-edged sword, as it does give Hikaru a hook on the king side. He goes king h8, and with this move, he's planning to go rook g8, move his bishop out of the way, let's say to f6 or f8, and then eventually carry out that g4 push.
Meanwhile, what does white do? So that gives white, what, like a couple of moves to either prepare for the pawn push or create some play of his own. Anish just for now calmly develops the last piece, but I guess that's also opening the path for the rook from e1 to maybe swing over to the queen side. Let's not forget that Anish has a passed pawn all the way on a7.
Exactly, yeah, bishop d2. I guess Anish, if he gets the time, maybe he wants to go for like knight b5 and bishop to a5. So knight b6, a crafty little move by Hikaru. I think what he wants to do is just go g4. Trade his h-pawn for the g-pawn, get his bishop in. It also opens the g-file. Like we said earlier, he can go rook to g8. Knight g6 is coming as well. And it's easy, it's very easy for Anish here to start seeing ghosts. Again, there's no easy way to break through on the queen side. There's also no easy way to simplify. So again, practically Hikaru still has all the chances in the world here. And I wonder, like, is Anish going to play a move like knight h2, stopping that g4 push altogether? Or is he just going to continue on the queen side with moves like knight b5?
Yeah, you were for a second highlighting the bishop on c4. One of the questions is, I guess if you're white, you're happy to give up that bishop, especially once the king has stepped to h8. The bishop is looking down into nothing on g8, so that bishop isn't doing much, and Anish goes for that move you talked about, knight b5, opening up the diagonal also for the bishop on d2.
Yeah, I think a nice move by Anish. He's exerting more pressure on the pawn on c7. Let's see if Hikaru is going to go for the move g4. Instead, he goes bishop to d7, keeping an eye on the knight over here, and perhaps in case of bishop a5, now he can go knight ec8. It's a little bit passive, but for the moment, he's keeping everything together on the king side. Also, once this knight comes to c8, he can at the right moment take on b5 and take on a7. So it feels like Anish definitely is still in the driver's seat, but Hikaru is he's fighting hard here.
For sure. The question is, if you're Hikaru now, I wonder if you're Anish here, how do you continue? I always wonder, do you do something about g4? You were mentioning maybe dropping the knight back to h2, or do you continue playing on the queen side? How do you make that decision if you're white here?
It's a very good question. Yeah, often you have to strike the right balance. Like, I think you should play perhaps a move like knight h2 at the right moment, but you shouldn't play too defensively, as you cannot stop the black attack forever. Like, eventually black is going to create counterplay on that side of the board, so you should still remain focused on your own play. And I think a good way for Anish to do so is with moves like rook c1 and perhaps moving this bishop out of the way, increasing the pressure on the pawn on c7. And there we see bishop d3 first, opening up the c-file for his rook. So I guess now maybe Hikaru is going to go knight ec8 to attack this pawn over here, and there we go. But Anish is just in time to defend it with rook ea1.
Yeah, a lot of maneuvering right now in this stage of the game. I wonder, when is the time going to be right for Hikaru to strike with g4? Could now be the moment?
It's certainly a possibility, but I do feel like he wants to go h5 first and only then g4. He goes rook f7, a very crafty little move. I think what he wants to do is like move the bishop and then go rook g7. I guess also defend this pawn a little bit more. Or I guess Fiona, what he wants to do is he wants to go c6. And after the trade, then this rook is also attacking this pawn on a7. So I think that's really his idea. In the meantime, we see bishop b4 by Anish. And I wonder what that's all about.
Well, I guess he's fighting against maybe this c-pawn push, saying your pawn on d6 is going to be weak. So what happens after, let's take a look, if c5?
Yeah, so c5 is a possibility. So let's say Anish takes, Hikaru recaptures. I don't know, it looks very passive. I mean, even if somehow Anish, even if Hikaru would take here and then take an a7, Anish should have tremendous compensation. With the bishop pair, all of the light squares would be weak for black. So it's not looking easy. I really like how Anish is playing this game, and it's again looking very difficult to get in the g4 push at the right moment.
Yeah, g4. Okay, what about playing h5 now? I'm a bit worried about how this pawn is undefended there. I was wondering if there's some knight moves, but
maybe just knight h2, attacking the pawn, and you stop g4, and you don't have a good way to defend this one. So it's, you can sack, but I don't really see a way to.
Okay, let's take a look. If I go g4.
A g4 here, yeah, I think white just takes twice, and I mean, you can go f3, but white takes again. But what you could do is maybe you just go like bishop f8, followed by rook h7, and queen h4. Black always has some attacking chances in the King's Indian.
If I go queen h4 immediately instead of bishop f8, what do you do with the knight?
Perhaps you just defend it with f3, and like queen f2 is coming quickly. This is a threat, so it all feels like our attack is a little bit too slow. And now we also see Hikaru taking his time.
To g3, that would be nice, but it unfortunately not so easy to achieve. It will take way too long.
You see Anish, by the way, very focused in the meantime. Hikaru still looking a little bit relaxed. So let's see how Hikaru will try to create some counterplay here. Like he always finds a way, right? That's what we always assume. But it's not looking easy here at all against Anish, who's playing a great match so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Anish, very focused. He played the first game incredibly well. This one, so far, he seems to have it under control. What we need, I think, really to hope is that Hikaru can just create a mess. Objectively speaking, as you mentioned, the position is bad, but he needs to just at some point, one of these pawns needs to go. Either we need to push the pawns on the king side, or try and go for the c5 push. Hikaru has been thinking for quite a long time here. Someone's saying looks a lot like the World Cup against Prague. I don't think so. I think against Prague it was a lot more, under control. Against Prague, Hikaru wasn't doing as badly. It was just that he couldn't, the position was much more equal. It was a lot less sharp than this. The position was less bad for Hikaru, but there was also a lot less chances of creating something.
Exactly. There was very little risk in the position for Prague. Like there really wasn't a way to go wrong for him, and that's why at some point Hikaru, he took a little bit too much risk and he got punished for that. But yeah, here there's definitely still chances. Again, the evil bar doesn't tell the whole story against Prague. Like you said, Prague had a very significant advantage and no risk here. If Hikaru can get things rolling on the king side, there's still all to play for. But the thing is, it's very difficult to do so because now his knights are fully occupied at stopping white's kingside play. In the meantime, he goes king h7, and Fiona, I think he wants to go king g6 to prepare that h5 push. It's all a little bit slow, but how is Anish exactly going to break through on the queen side? And I guess he wants to go knight c3 to go bishop e5 right after.
Yeah, if you're white, you would love to exchange this light squared bishop, which right now it doesn't look like it's doing much on d7, but that will become an important part of the attack if Hikaru can get in h5 g4. The problem, if you play king g6, as I guess you're closing the g file. You would kind of love to both have the king on g6 and your heavy pieces on the g file. Can we get away with queen g8 and queen g6, or are we not in time?
Yeah, so let's have go c6 now. Okay, so now Anish can take, he recaptures, and he will be taking that pawn on a7. So let's see. So c6 is on the board. Perhaps he could have played c5 instead, as now Anish can also ignore it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think Anish is going to take it. It will simplify the position a little bit. It will make it easier for him to play the position, becomes a little bit clearer, so to speak. that being said, it looks tough to defend the pawn on a7. So, there's still chances, and both players are getting low on time.
Yeah, Anish now, both players close to the 5-minute mark. And Anish does decide to capture on c6 and is now looking to exchange these light squared bishops.
Yeah, so bishop e5, good move by Anish. So I guess maybe Hikaru is going to play a move like queen e8. So in case white takes, he can just recapture with the queen and still keep an eye on this pawn on a7. But it's just so difficult to actually get rid of it, as Anish can, let's say, trade and go knight b5. So not looking easy at all here for Hikaru. Let's see how what he's going to do here.
Yeah, a tricky situation. We still haven't been able to push that pawn on h5 right now. h5 and g4. White has a firm grip on that. The queen on e2 is well placed. Hikaru, of course, is doing all he can. He keeps all the pieces on the board. And the exchange on c6, it created an opening on d5. Will Anish try and jump in to that? The knight on c3 doesn't have a job any longer now that it's, not defending the bishop. Oh, the queen comes in.
Yeah, he jumps in with queen h5, but queen f8 by Hikaru to defend. He plays that so quickly. Now white can play knight g4, putting some pressure on the bishop and the pawn on h6, but I guess there's just bishop to g7. Again, it's looking really dodgy here for black. I don't see a good way to get rid of this pawn. That being said, I don't see a way for white to finish it off. So even though Anish must know he's doing great here, Hikaru, he doesn't go away. He hangs in there, and let's hope he can cook up some magic when both players get low on time.
Yeah, sometimes in those spots, if you're white, you can get a little bit frustrated if you feel you're doing well. I'm with you. What we need the players, to, if they both get to the minute mark, then I think Hikaru's chances go up drastically. Right now, let's say it as it is. Anish has done a great job in this game, getting an advantage out of the opening and then holding on to it. Queen f8. What is Hikaru's idea? To play rook g7? Or the problem is that, right, I really wanted to push those pawns on the king side, but we look so far removed from that now. So what is the new plan?
I don't know. I don't see a direct way for Anish to break through, which must also be somewhat annoying for him. We see how he's very focused looking at the screen, looking for something, but I don't think it's right there. I think for the moment, Hikaru is hanging in there. And again, you have to be careful getting low on time against the Hikaru. We know what a magician he is, and he can really turn everything around. He goes bishop to e2. I think his idea, Fiona, is to go bishop g4 and bishop f5, and that looks like a nice plan.
Mm-hmm. So does Hikaru need to just agree to exchanging these bishops after all, by playing maybe bishop c6 and bishop back to d7? Or how do we stop this threat?
I don't think there's a good way we can stop it, but I think even if the bishop lands on f5, it's not devastating just yet. And I wonder if we can play bishop c6 and after bishop g4, can we possibly take? I mean, it looks really dangerous. I can, let's say, trade everything, go bishop f5, go knight g4, and queen g6 is coming as well. It looks tough. It looks tough.
But maybe, sometimes in a bad position, maybe you just have to grab the material and then try and hold on. This is a tough spot. Let's not, hide that fact. Okay, he goes bishop.
The d8.
8.
So let's say
Does he want
G4.
to give up sack on f5, maybe?
I think so. Perhaps he goes knight d7, and apparently that's a big mistake. I think in case of bishop f5, he does want to take, recapture, and go knight f6 after. And I think Fiona, his other idea is to put this bishop on b6. But Fiona, what if Anish goes bishop e6 now? Attacking the rook has to move, let's say here, and then you go bishop f5. And there's no way to sack. Knight g4 comes in. That looks absolutely crushing. And there we go.
The problem is that you cannot go to f6 because the knight on d7 is hanging. So I think the bishop is gonna drop back.
Yeah, I don't see a way to defend. I mean, knight g4 now, you take the pawn on h6. There's no way to defend. This looks absolutely devastating. I think everything is falling apart right now.
And I think even looking at the camera, I talked earlier about how I think maybe it's not the worst thing for Hikaru to leave this tournament early, because I look at the camera in general, when Hikaru, of course, he understands his position is either lost or on the verge of being lost. And usually we see some signs of frustration, but I don't see any of that here, really. I don't see Hikaru being annoyed with himself. So I think even that, goes a long way to showing, I think, just the state he is in right now.
Exactly. So he goes queen to g6. I think Anish, by the way, had an immediate knockout. He could have taken on a 6, and after you take, there's bishop takes c8. If you take the rook, there's a8, and after bishop takes, this one is gonna hurt. But after queen g6, it's looking bad, but it's not over just yet. That being said, I don't really see a good way to keep the game going. I guess at some point you're gonna have to trade, but I mean, White's got a dominant position, and he only needs to draw.
Yeah, actually, maybe I have to take back, like, we do see some head shakes now, so I don't think Hikaru, doesn't care at all. It's never nice to lose in chess. But yeah, it's not over just yet, but as you're saying, it's getting really tough to spot the defense. He does take on g4. Yeah, and unfortunately,
G7.
there was no choice.
Yeah, so let's see how Anish will try to finish this one off. Again, there's no immediate knockout. It's looking great for him. We see a trade. I think Fiona, I know my boy. He is going to take on c8 and take on d6. I mean, that looks very, very safe, looks very good, and probably just winning. So, and it simplifies the position. So he's going to do this. I know Anish.
Yeah, especially given that he doesn't need to win. A draw for Anish is enough here. First, he will try to win, but I think it makes a lot of sense what you are suggesting, just collecting some more material, play it the safe way. I think it's actually the best way to proceed, even if it's not the best move according to the computer. Anish is getting a bit low on time. Knight d5. Okay, he's keeping the pieces on the board. Do we have
now
to take?
Hikaru can take. Yeah. I think you have to. I mean, you can also go rook f7, but they're all the same. White can take on c8, followed by taking on d6. So I think we're going to have to take. Anish will recapture. And then what is the idea? Like, take an a7. This endgame doesn't look great either. Okay, rook c7 instantly by Hikaru, which apparently is a miss. What he should have done is take. And here's the thing. Like, this endgame you can hold, but you're never going to win.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of, we see all of this, but this is just over. I mean, like, rook b1, rook b8, I think it's absolutely hopeless. Or here, and we have rook b1 on the board.
Yeah, I think we're not Hikaru pushing the pawn on e3. But I guess there's a lot of things that White can do here. Rook b7, check.
Yeah, no, it's just over. The king is in checkmate. You're going to have to move it. Let's say you go to g6, White takes, and White's practically threatening checkmate over here. So Hikaru is going to go down 2 pawns, and Anish still has full control.
Yeah, and well, there we go. The moves are coming in fast, but as you said, 2 extra pawns. One of them on the 7th rank, the other not too far off. Hikaru's playing on, but yeah, we can see from his body language. I mean, the problem is, a draw here would be a miracle, but even a draw wouldn't be enough. So yeah, Hikaru resigns here after rook takes e7, and unfortunately, that's the end of the road for Hikaru in the AI Cup. But as he said, he's been playing so much. They're very important over-the-board events coming up in October. He mentioned on Twitter he might be playing Title Tuesday later. I think maybe it would not be a bad thing, to play some Blitz, something where he plays at home to stream and get a few days now to take a bit of a rest.
Exactly. A very convincing victory for Anish. I think he played really good chess, both with black and with white. He got a great position out of the opening of this game and never really let Hikaru off the hook. So he fully deserves to win. yeah, like you said, unfortunately, this is the end for Hikaru, but there's still many more events coming up. And like you said, the Qatar Open and the Grand Swiss are going to be much more important, as those will give him chance to qualify for the candidates.
Absolutely. And by the way, stay tuned, guys, because we will be joined by Hikaru. Maybe in the meanwhile, we can see what is going on in the Alireza game, where Lazavik was also in a must-win situation.
Yep, so let's have a look how Dennis will try to come back. So Dennis, he is a little bit better, probably objectively a draw, but definitely still chance for wide push here. One problem though, Fiona, is that also he's down 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, 1:20 on the clock for Dennis. Rook endings, you know what they say, rook endings are all drawn. That's of course not completely true. White is a little bit better, but it's going to be very tough to win this one. If you're white, how do you try and make progress here? Do you try and go for a break on the king side?
I think so, yeah. Perhaps what he could do is go like king f4, and then at the right moment rook d3, and after the king moves, then maybe e5, break up the pawn structure a little bit. But it's tough to see how he's going to do it. That being said, I don't really see an active plan at all for Alireza. I think he's just going to have to sit with like rook b8, rook a8, and wait, and that's actually what he's been doing over the last couple of moves. So I think Alireza should hold this one, also given the time situation, but Dennis still has chances here, and he's trying.
He is certainly trying. He has to try. If he doesn't win this game, that's the end of the road. But we are being joined now by Hikaru. Hikaru, thank you for coming on. I know today was far from your best day. What are your thoughts on the
Well, I mean, there really are two ways of looking at it. First of all, is it probably, I mean, if I was going to play the way that I played in these last 2 days with basically no interest or no motivation, I should have probably just skipped the event, if I'm being brutally honest. I mean, putting that aside for a second, though, I mean, to be fair, Anish played quite well in the first game. At least he found this f5 idea, which was very nice. You know, it's what it is. I think there isn't anything really great I can say. There isn't anything, really all that bad either that I can say. I just tried to be creative in the first game and it backfired. I mean, the interesting for me, though, is that having played this f4 move, which of course, like I've literally played b3 knight f3 a million times. I probably have never played f4 after trying to be really creative. The position was still probably okay after knight g4 if I'd played e5. I mean, that's maybe the one silver lining, is that even a position that I thought was really bad was still maybe playable. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't meant to be. And obviously, when you lose the first game in a 2-game match with the white pieces, second game is going to be a mess. And even in the second game, I was very unhappy with some of the decisions I took. For example, king h8 wasted a move. I could have just played knight b6 and g4 right away. Not to say that it's really good for me or anything, but I should have done that. Also, later on, I could have played, I think, c5, and then I'd like wasted a move with bishop f6 before going c6, which was actually a mouse move. I meant to go c5, not c6. But regardless, I mean, it just wasn't very good. That's just a simple way of putting it, and I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah, no, it felt like overall Anish played a very good match, and he was in control. So how do you explain the fact that you've never played a 4 in such positions and you decided to go for it in this game?
Well, I mean, it's no secret what I said yesterday, even if people want to assume that I'm making excuses or other things. Like, I am frankly just very tired. I'm a little bit burned out. And really, if I look at the overall picture, if I look at the rest of the year, of course, the tournaments in Qatar and Isle of Man are obviously the most important events. And if I do well in those events, at least I'll something to look forward to. I think that's the bottom line. So it's pretty much trying to play creative stuff and save my energy, save the preparation for those events rather than try and use them here, especially after what happened yesterday. So that's sort of the balance. But honestly, I mean, as far as just playing f4, I was just trying to play moves, play quickly, and I mean, there isn't good answer really. It's just tired and just trying to play creatively. And I mean, to Anish's credit, he punished me for being too creative in this opening with f4 and everything else. So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
You mentioned silver lining earlier. Do you think, in a way, of course, it's never nice to lose a match when you decide to play the tournament, but do you think, this early exit might give you some time to rest up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it will. I think, it's very difficult being in my position. And what I mean by that, to be clear, is that it's very difficult after seeing, this huge boom online and everything that has happened. Obviously for me, it's been really, really good. But if I'm being really, really honest, at the end of the day, I've kind of soured on non-blitz events online. I mean, for whatever reason, between this event and the last one too, where I lost to Ali Reza and Jordan Van Forest, I mean, I just kind of don't really feel very excited by the online events that aren't blitz or bullet, for that matter. I think that it's just, I'm actually kind of more excited and more interested in over the board chess at the moment. And I know that's probably not what chess.com wants to hear, certainly, but that is simply how I feel right now. I'm kind of just more into over the board chess than online chess at the moment, at least as it relates to anything beyond blitz and bullets. So certainly I'm sure I'll be able to come back, and when the grand final happens in December, I will, I'll definitely try to do my best. But I've just kind of, I think, soured on the whole thing. I think that sort of reflects overall on the burnout and just the general negativity I have towards this event, like this specific event, where, as I said, like I just couldn't bring myself to prepare for Magnus yesterday. Obviously, I did no preparation for the match today, and I don't want to sound too negative, but I've just kind of soured on the whole like online chess beyond like blitz and bull, and certainly with all the loud noise around everything that's happening with online chess, it certainly doesn't help matters.
Yeah, no, we understand. And I guess the good thing for you is that this is the last one of the Champions Chess Tour. Of course, there will be the final. So I assume there will be no rapid chess for a while. And it's just going to be, like I said, blitz and bullet. And you will have your classical events. And how do you plan to prepare for those?
I mean, I have already started doing some preparation for both of those events. So it's basically trying to just like rest as much as I can, do some preparation when I don't have to stream every day. That's pretty much the plan overall. So yeah, I mean, I've started the preparation. It's just going forward and doing what I can. And I think that honestly, it's for the best. Like, I always like to think that everything happens for a reason, whether people want to believe that or not. I like to, sort of live with that belief. And I think for me, when I look at this, if I look at the previous event that I played online, which was some months ago, it was right before Norway chess. And I actually played it from Norway, played 2 horrible matches, and I went on to actually win Norway chess. So I feel like everything happens for a reason. I'm pretty sure that I'll do better over the board. If I don't do better over the board, then maybe it's time to reevaluate whether I actually really want to play competitive chess anymore, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it's just trying to sort of find the motivation, find the inspiration. And I think, again, for me at least, I feel like with over the board chess, at least in recent times, I felt it much more than I have with the online events.
Right now in this state, you're talking about burnout. If you look forward to those 2, as you mentioned, very important tournaments, Qatar and Isle of Man, what is your state of motivation or of looking forward to those tournaments?
Well, I think the main thing is to try and play good chess first and foremost. Obviously, if I play well, I'll qualify for the candidates. But I think for me, like as I've said many times, when you put too much pressure on yourself, you have high expectations, bad things tend to happen. So for me, I'm just looking forward to trying to play well. Certainly, if there's any motivations that I've played really poorly and I've lost a couple of matches, and it's been quite bad as far as online goes. So I guess that if anything is the motivation, certainly in terms of those events, just play well, try to prove that I can still do it over the board, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But certainly, as I said, I mean, even if the results have looked good online, I mean, certainly anyone who plays chess seriously, I would say, like, even if you were to ask Anish, for example, if you were to look at my matches against like Maxime and Fabiano and even Magnus, it's very clear that despite the result, the quality has not been fantastic. The final against Magnus, the quality was fairly decent, but almost every other match I've played in recent times online has been pretty bad quality wise. So yeah, it's just, trying to get back into it. But I think as far as burnout goes, it is a very unusual feeling, because I certainly have never felt the way that I feel right now in the last like 4 years, I would say. So simply trying to get over it, get back into the rhythm, and hopefully good things happen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, like I said, you have some classical events coming up. After those, you of course you'll try to qualify for the candidates, and then you'll have the final. So how do you think you're going to approach that so you will be able to show your best chess there?
Well, I mean, there's also a match in November as well, which for whatever reason continues to not be announced publicly. But there is a big match in November that probably is more important than all of these events, if I'm being frank. And I think that just looking forward to that and looking to the finals in this, I have a lot of events, and if I play well in one or two of those events, it could be very, very monumental. So in spite of the bad results here or in the last online Chess Champions Tour event, I feel pretty optimistic. So I just have to play good chess. That's the bottom line. And I think if I can find the motivation, I can prepare and be ready, be in form. Obviously, I can still play with the best. So it's just trying to find the rhythm.
Hikaru, there's about 2 weeks until Qatar starts, and I saw this question from Bob5 in the chat. Can you take a 2-week break and enjoy life, please?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's at the end of the day, I'm a streamer first, and I think that it's a lot of people seem to not understand. Maybe not understand is the wrong word, but when you look at the metrics, or you look at how online streaming works, for everybody, whether it's say making videos on YouTube, whether it's streaming, whatever it is, if you do take breaks, essentially you are going to take a hit on your income without a doubt. I mean, again, I don't want to say that I'm not fortunate, grateful for everything that's happened, but certainly there was a video for anybody who's curious about it. Which was done by Moist Critical, is about when Tifu, another streamer, actually stopped streaming altogether, and Charlie spoke a lot about about the stress and the pressure and all these other things. And so yeah, as much as I'd like to, it's not really something I can do at the present time. Obviously, I have many obligations that are worth significantly more than playing professional chess tournaments or even the Chess Champions Tour events. So as much as I'd like to, I can't necessarily take a 2-week break. I can probably take a couple days here or there, but 2 weeks will not happen in the present environment.
And
we'll just keep this show going for you.
Well, no. I mean, but joking aside, I think that's the thing, is that the main way I've done it over the last couple of years is, I mean, the longest break I think I took was actually quite recently. It was at the end of August. I think it took about, maybe not, was it end of, yeah, I think it was end of August. I took about 5 days off or 6 days off from streaming. That's basically the longest break I've taken in the last 3 years, since, well, basically 4 years, because we're already at the end of 2023. So basically since the pandemic started in early 2020, I really, that's the longest break I've taken, was 6 days. So it's definitely it adds up over time. But I think the bottom line is that if I can find the motivation, I can find the inspiration, be ready, I'm sure I'll be completely fine for over the board chess. That's the main thing. And then obviously, as far as online goes, I think my mood on a lot of stuff with online chess has soured in recent times. So we'll see. We'll see whether I continue to play these events, if they're even online to begin with. I think that's a whole separate conversation that will probably be had in the near future. But the main thing is just trying to be fresh and trying to play well in the tournaments that ultimately do matter, which will be Qatar and Isle of Man. If I can play well in those tournaments, I mean everything will be fine, and these will just be blips on the radar. If not, then there maybe are more serious issues, but we'll see.
Hikaru, just one final question from my end. Chat would like to know if you're gonna play the late Title Tuesday today.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I was already intending to play the late Title Tuesday, regardless of what happened in today's match, because it was a 2-game match, not a 4-game match. And I really do enjoy playing events like Title Tuesday. As I've said, obviously I'm a streamer first, and it's good content to play Title Tuesday. And frankly, after playing this poorly, if I can play worse than this in Title Tuesday, that would be a small feat, certainly. So I will play Title Tuesday, and hopefully I can play well in that event. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll just see how it goes. But at the end of the day, all the general talk aside, I mean, to be fair, like Anish did play well. He did play a good match today. I actually would say that I felt like Anish, like in today's match, compared to yesterday's match, Anish played significantly better, relatively speaking, to how I played than how Magnus played relative to how I played. Because yesterday very easily could have been 1-1 if I had won that second game, like I probably normally would. So to be fair, like today's match, there isn't anything I'd be like, this or that. Like Anish should play a good match. So I do have to give give a lot of credit to Anish. And I mean, hopefully he'll do well, because certainly he's a player who has not had a lot of success in the Chess Champions Tour, and so hopefully he'll make it deep this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. He played great chess today. And yeah, Hikaru, I just have one more question. So the other matches today is we have Magnus versus Nepo, and we have MVL versus Shaq. What do you expect from those matchups?
Well, I mean, I expect Magnus to win, and also, like, even though I'm talking about like burnout and other things, as I said yesterday, I guess Fiona was here. I don't think you were here, Benjamin, but I think one of the reasons that Magnus is doing well, maybe not doing so well, but the reason that Magnus seemingly is winning these events with ease in recent times, in my opinion, is because everybody is suffering some form of burnout, and what I mean by that is everybody's playing so many tournaments to try and maximize their earnings or financial success, because there's so many events going on. I mean, I spoke about Wesley yesterday. Nepo, for example, he's playing this. He's also playing in the Levitov event for the last couple days. You know, if we talk about that other player, Hans Niemann, I mean, he's playing like the World Junior in Mexico, but then I think he's also playing this tournament in the mornings. I mean, everybody's playing so much chess. And in general, I think everyone's suffering from a little bit of burnout. But the problem is that Magnus, even if he might have a little bit of burnout, the quality of his play doesn't dip as much relative to everybody else. And so I think that's why you're seeing Magnus just dominate these events, because everybody's playing so many tournaments. And even if Magnus isn't having his best day, the quality dip is minimal relative to everybody else, where they just go right off the cliff. Whether it's me, whether it's Wesley or others. So I expect Magnus to beat Nepo. I mean, Magnus has had great results. That being said, it'll be interesting to see what the openings are, because certainly when they played the SEC match, Magnus was not getting anything out of the opening in the Petrov systems. They were just going to a lot of boring drawish endgame. So it'll be interesting to see what Magnus comes up with in the openings as white, but I still do expect him to win pretty cleanly.
Well, Hikaru, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this upcoming match, as well as on a lot of other topics with us. We appreciate you coming on here. Best of luck for TT later on. And yeah, hopefully you get some.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be back to join you guys in maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Probably just go relax. And go from there. So it's not a big deal. I mean, maybe that's a path to go, honestly, because I think one of the things is for everyone who's watching, whether it's here or like watching on Twitch or wherever they're watching, is that I'm not actually all that upset. And that's another thing. If you're not getting upset about these matches, I mean, you can definitely tell that something's a little bit off, because it's like I'm just not that upset about even losing this match today. So I'll definitely go get some rest. We'll come back and go from there.
Fantastic. Yep. Well, in that case, we look forward to seeing you soon for what should be a good match, Magnus against Nepo. So yeah, enjoy your quick rest, and we'll catch you very soon.
Absolutely. See you guys later.
See you later.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
All right, so always great to hear his thoughts. It seems like the match between Magnus and Nepo will start a little bit later. So for now, we are going on a very short break, but do not go anywhere. You definitely do not want to miss the best players in the world duking it out. So we will see you in just a few. And welcome back, everyone, to the Champions Chess Tour. Fiona, we see the first game here between Magnus Carlsen and Nepo. And just like Hikaru predicted, we have a Petrov.
Yeah, so a solid opening by Jan Nepomniachtchi, who actually, I was just looking, he won did you mention that in the interview? He just won the Levitov tournament.
He won a tournament.
Yeah, he won the tournament. So let's spare a thought for Jan, I guess, when you've just won a tournament in Amsterdam, you'd rather be out celebrating than playing chess. On the other hand, he's playing Magnus Carlsen. He must be feeling confident after winning the tournament. And yeah, taking, I think, a solid approach with the black pieces in game one, using his World Championship match prep. It does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so we see that Magnus has we have a queenless middle game, because as only the queens have been traded, but for the rest, all of the pieces are still on the board. Magnus having a very slight lead in development. As we all can see, these knights and bishops are symmetrical, also the pawn on d3 and d6, but Magnus has a knight developed on c3 and a bishop on d2, whereas Nepo still has to develop his knight on b8 and the bishop on c8. So still a lot of space to maneuver, so yeah, I guess that's really what Magnus wants out of this opening. Yeah,
I think both players will be relatively happy with what they got. You talked a bit about White's plan. How does Black continue with his development here? A6 is not a move that I was necessarily expecting.
Yeah, so a6, he's stopping White from jumping up with knight to b5. Perhaps at some point Magnus can expand on the king side a little bit with moves like h3 and g4. Also, maybe something like knight d4 and bishop f3 would make sense. But overall, I'm not too impressed with Magnus's approach. I mean, I kind of wonder like if he's also saving up some preparation for other events that he finds more important. So let's see how he's going to continue here. A move like rook h1 also looks very natural.
Yeah, the question is, what is important to Magnus these days, right? He's given up famously his world champion title, but he also has a busy schedule coming up. He will be playing in the European Club Cup for his team Offerspiel, the Norwegian team, starting this, I should really know, starting this Sunday. And after that, he will be playing alongside Hikaru and many other top GMs in Qatar. So also busy times coming up for Magnus, who, yeah, as you said, not the most ambitious approach here. He is trying to grab some space now in the center. By the way, Hikaru was in the chat a second ago confirming that he will rejoin in a bit. So that's something to look forward to. It will be great to have Hikaru here with us to cover the games and then to see him play in the late Title Tuesday later on.
And we see the move h6 here by Jan Palnishi. And I'm actually kind of curious, is maybe one of the mods, Hikaru himself, can answer this question, or, you know, we might ask him as well when he joins the show. But is he going to do a recap today? Yeah, so let's see h6.
It would be funny if that was his idea. It would be funny if that was his idea of taking a rest. I'll see you guys in half an hour. I'm just going to take, you know, film my recap and rest up that way. He's saying he will join in about 15 minutes and he will play Title Tuesday. So we can ask him about the recap in a short bit.
All right, so yeah, he plays. So we see Nepo playing bishop to g4, h3 by Magnus, and now we will see an interesting transition. Nepo will probably give up his bishop pair and get the better pawn structure, but of course Magnus does get the advantage of the bishop pair. And now we see knight c6 attacking this pawn on d4. Also, Magnus gets this half-open g-file to work with, and he goes knight e2, a clever little move, defending the pawn on d4 and also stopping black from jumping up with knight b4.
So do you think black is at some point going to expand on the queen side, play maybe some b5, or what are black's plans here? Yeah,
good question. I guess what Nepo could also do is play d5 and give the bishop, the dark side bishop, a little bit more room to move. The bishop can go to d6. I guess White's going to go rook g1, but you can just go king f8 and there's no longer a threat. That being said, I guess Magnus is going to slowly build up with rook g2, rook g1, and it is somewhat uncomfortable to deal with this target on the g7 square, as if you push it up, then you hang the pawn on h6. So I kind of like what Magnus has here.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I'm black, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable here. I see Liu is saying boring draw probably. I don't know. I think this one could still heat up.
I respectfully disagree as well. I think there's still a lot to play for here, especially if your opponent is Magnus Carlsen. He will find a way to keep the game going. We see knight h7 here by Nepo, but I wonder what he wants to do in case of rook to g1. Is he aiming to go like knight g5? I guess that could be an idea, but maybe Magnus just goes rook g3, defending both pawns, preparing f4 or rook g1, and I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this move. Maybe bishop g5 is what he is intending.
Yeah, bishop g5 I think would make a lot of sense to take the sting out of this bishop pair, which is aimed at the black king. Although I guess Magnus could always meet bishop g5 with f4 if he wanted to hold on to the bishop. So maybe he'll still continue with, as you were saying, with rook g1. And let's see what happens there. If rook g1, bishop g5, well, rook g1 has been played. If bishop g5, f4, where does the bishop go?
I would think to f6 to attack this pawn over here, but maybe Magnus just plays c3. And the good thing about provoking f4 is that it has blocked this diagonal for the dark square bishop. You can open it up though by going f4 f5, but then you block the diagonal of your light square bishop. So not easy to see how Magnus is going to break through, but it does look quite passive what Nepo is doing. And after the move bishop g5, I think if Magnus does want to keep his advantage, I think he should play that move f4 that you mentioned to keep the bishops on the board.
Yeah, I think Magnus certainly always wants to keep his advantage if he can. He doesn't want to trade to give up his bishop pair. Now, the pawn on f2 is under attack. I would be very tempted to just go rook g2, defend the pawn, looking to double on the g file. To be honest, I feel that Nepo might already be in some slight trouble here.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of misplayed this. Magnus is very easy play here. He just wants to go rook dg1, attack this pawn over here. I didn't know it was that dark outside in Amsterdam, but apparently it is. So let's see.
Fantastic news that we've now got the player cameras.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it should be the same time in Norway, but I guess Magnus has slightly better lighting as he is at home. Let's see, maybe knight f6 and go like knight h5. It already looks problematic for Nepo. I mean, maybe king h8 and rook g8, but that looks really passive as well. So I really like Magnus's chances here.
Yeah, Nepo, we can also tell by his time usage. I was saying earlier, he's one of the fastest players on the tour, but I think both his time usage and even his demeanor, you know, the face he's pulling, I think he understands that this has gone a little bit wrong somewhere, and it will take, I think, quite precise defense here to not get into some serious trouble quickly.
Yeah, and we're getting word that it's also dark in Tilburg, you know. I think when Diane does those Yasser impressions, he's always talking about Tilburg 1972. And actually I met Yasser like not too long ago, and he was saying how like the chess scene in the Netherlands used to be great, but for whatever reason it kind of collapsed
when you
in the
left.
last. Yeah, but already before. But it's let's talk a little bit about the chess. It's looking great for Magnus, and like you said, also the fact that Nepo is playing slow is a very clear indicator that he's not happy with his position on the board.
Absolutely. I mean, he's been in the tank here for a long time after rook g2. I mean, I'm kind of tempted to play a move like king h8 to just step out of the g file, but wow, the computer did not like knight f8 one bit.
Yeah, maybe just rook dg1, and it's already hard to see how you defend this pawn over here. I mean, 96 runs into d5. I mean, that's just game over. That's just a very standard fork. I mean, perhaps bishop f6, but maybe you just go c3, you go knight g3 to h5, and it looks very tough for black to hang on there.
I can barely make out the board any longer from all the arrows, but yeah, I am with you. This is not looking good for Nepo. I see in the chat, MasterChef was saying this won't end before TT starts. Well, maybe actually, maybe not all the matches will end, but I think if Magnus wins game one, you know, Nepo, he must be tired. He's been playing so much top level chess today already. You know, if you're in the running for tournament victory, that's always going to there's going to be some added pressure. So I think there is a chance actually that Magnus wraps this matchup before the late TT, which starts in what, three hours from now, right?
Yeah, 3 hours from now. Yeah. Yeah, I guess either way, it would be fun to see him in Title Tuesday. But if he doesn't play, that gives players like Hikaru and myself a better chance to win. So it's all good. So Magnus just slowly improves with the move c3. So now let's see what Jan's going to do. It's not looking good. I think Magnus is looking here to take an early lead. I think Nepo, I mean, the knight cannot go to e6. Maybe the d7, he goes bishop f6 preemptively, but maybe now this plan, knight g3 to h5, looks really nice for white.
Yeah, and the question in house is how does black stop it? You're already not in time. Wow, g6. g6 doesn't actually stop the knight from jumping to h5, but at least it gives the bishop, I guess, a square to drop back to on h8. But is that really what you want to do?
Yeah, I guess it could go to h8. It can also go, let's say, to h4. But Magnus is so good in these positions. I think he really made a good opening choice because he wants to, first of all, Magnus, we know he's an he's a master in the endgame, right? So that's probably why he's happy to get the queens off. But also, he keeps a lot of play in these positions. So there's still plenty of room to outplay his opponents because he's the better chess player. And that is what he's showing right here. I mean, he's just playing brilliant chess right now. And it's already looking really bad for Nepo.
Yeah, the bishop on f6 is under attack. It doesn't have too many squares it can go to. So e7, g7, h8, h4. Can we rule out some of them? Did I say d8 as well? But yeah. Where would
all of these moves are
go?
Perhaps not to d8 or e7, because I think Nepo would like to play knight e7 to add another defender to the g6 spot. He goes bishop g7, now perhaps just rook dg1 with c5 by Magnus. He's sacking the piece, but he will get it back in short time after rook dg1.
Yeah, I mean, this black king is looking very lonely. The bishops are looking beautiful. Rook g1. Magnus hasn't played yet, which maybe means he's also considering f6, which would also do the same job of attacking the bishop on g7. It would allow black maybe to jump to g6, so I like what he has done. Nepo goes knight g6 anyway, trying to at least close down the g file.
Yeah, so the g file is closed, but for the moment it's looking great for Magnus. He's got a better pawn structure. And Fiona, I just received word that Hikaru is about to join us for the coverage.
And there he is, right on cue. Hikaru, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back. So what else is surprising? Magnus was winning this endgame, it looks like, as usual.
Yeah, so are you impressed with this opening play?
Well, I mean, this is typical Magnus. I didn't see the middle, so let me pull up the game on my screen. I didn't see the middle. I mean, I saw the first set of moves, and the next thing I know, he's got like double pawns, and it looked very promising with the two bishops. So just give me a second while I pull it up. So let me see what do we get? Not that
we're
match.
just actually going through the game on stream again.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I see it in Zoom too. Yeah. Like okay. So go back a few moves. So after rook h1, rook he8, what happened? Okay.
Yeah. So here Nepo was fine, but he made a big mistake by voluntarily trading off this bishop for the knight on f3.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like it's one of those situations where it looks like the structure is compromised, but long term with these ideas like f4, f5, combined with knight e2 and c3, probably white just has a small advantage. I don't know if it's like winning or anything, but it looks very difficult because the pawn at f4 restricts the knight. You don't have knight g5. Yeah, and it's already after rook g2 looks great for Magnus. I mean, no risk, very, very pleasant position, and he's just gonna win. He's just gonna win, right? F5,
yeah, no, he's
nice.
He's just truly a bully in these endgames.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there are a lot of people who talk about who talk about the debate between whether Magnus is the best or Kasparov is the best. And regardless of that debate, I think there's zero doubt in my mind, at least, that Magnus is definitely the best endgame player of all time. And I don't think it's particularly close if you look at his career. Even if you compare it against somebody like Anatoly Karpov or Vladimir Kramnik, I mean, the amount of positions that he wins in endgames is just truly astounding. So. Yeah, for Nepo to go into play this Petrov and just get one of these standard positions and then play bishop g4, bishop takes f3. I mean, I don't know if it's a Magnus effect or what, but it's just, it is really quite impressive. So I think anybody else, I think Nepo would have probably drawn this position quite easily. But against Magnus, goes bishop g4, takes f3, and then Magnus just slowly outplays him.
Do you have any thoughts on what sets Magnus apart from all these other greats when it comes to endgame play?
I mean, I think it's just something in the pattern recognition and the intuition that he has that nobody else possesses. I mean, you don't really, obviously you see it in the results in classical, but I think it's really, really profound when you look at some of the blitz games that Magnus has, where in the split second, when you have to make the split second decisions with like 4 seconds left on the clock, he somehow is able to find certain moves. And the best example was actually a game that I think he won on time technically against Alireza Firoza in the World Rapid and Blitz, where it looked like he was losing. It was an opposite color bishop's ending. And somehow, even with the minimal time on the clock, he still was able to find some incredible defensive resources with like literally no time on the clock. And so I think mainly it's just intuition, pattern recognition, whatever it is from when he was a very young kid. Obviously, others don't possess it. So certainly there's something more to it than just that. But Certainly, it's just he has a certain feel for where pieces belong in the end game, and I think that's the simplest way of explaining it.
Right, and
Yeah.
do you think that that is just talent, or do you think, like for aspiring players that are watching, do you think they should read a lot of books, or what is a way to develop that intuition?
I mean, I think obviously, I mean, nothing beats just practical experience of training, whether it's like playing games, whether it's studying through books or online puzzles. I mean, puzzles are a little bit tricky because I don't think there's necessarily a great way to only look at end games. But certainly, yeah, just looking at puzzles, trying to understand some of these ideas is very important. I think, though, at the end of the day, I mean, there's a reason Magnus is so good at end games and everybody else a little bit worse. That's just because he's Magnus. There's something different in his understanding. It's like saying, I can go out and hit a forehand every day for the next 10 years. That doesn't mean I'll be able to hit a forehand like Roger Federer, even if I do everything correct and I train and do these other things. So, I mean, I think people should try to do that, but certainly like nobody can actually do it. It's just something unique to Magnus for sure.
Speaking of the end game, Nepo is still fighting on.
Yeah, rook e1 and just resign, right? King g6, rook f3, and then rook f7, rook g1. I mean, yeah, just rook e1 is game over on the spot instantly.
There is still bishop f6, but you go down a couple of pawns. It looks quite hopeless.
You mean king g6, rook f3, bishop f6? Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, it looks so bad. I mean, it's just you know that Magnus is going to find the way. It's just it looks horrible. Because actually, what is the move? King g6, rook f3, bishop f6, rook g1 takes bishop h6. Rook g8, bishop g5. I mean, that should be winning for white, I assume. Okay, well, it's all happening, so let's see what happens.
Right, so there's still work to be done. And Hikaru, you've talked about how often you've been on the other side against this, like Magnus is beating you in some endgames. Like, is it discouraging when you play an endgame like this and he's finding one best move after another?
Well, I think this one's just much worse because there's almost no chance for him to go wrong, honestly, with the bishop pair from that early middle game. This isn't one of the ones where there aren't complications in this endgame, so it's not too surprising to me. But the thing is, Magnus always continues to find very, very good moves and put the pressure on, even when it looks like it should be a draw. And I think for a lot of players, it's difficult to deal with because against other players, you expect to be a draw, but Magnus continues to keep finding the best moves. And that's, I think, what really does set him apart is that he will continue to fight to the very end.
Yeah, speaking of endgames which are draw, I'm sure it's not something you want to maybe think of, but yesterday in game 2, when you offered that draw against Magnus, did you take a look at that endgame?
I didn't look at it closely. I mean, I think it's probably a draw with perfect play, but I think in human practice it would have been very, very difficult for Magnus to save. But that being said, I mean, I think I actually realized what happened. Like, I even when I was thinking about thinking about it after the game, I think what happened there in my mind is that when I offered the draw, I think for a split second I thought that he had a rook and a bishop, not two bishops. Now that I think speaks to where my mind has been at, frankly. But I think that's what happened. Is I think in the split second I just thought he had a rook and a bishop, not two bishops. And so if it's a rook and a bishop and 4 pawns versus a queen and 3 pawns, that's a very, very easy draw. But with 2 bishops, of course, it's not. So I think that's the actual explanation for what happened in my mind in that split second is for half a second, I think I just thought that it was a rook and a bishop, not 2 bishops. As embarrassing as it is to say, I think that's what actually happened.
Yeah, I think it was visible even from the camera footage where, Magnus looked so surprised, and you, like, within a split second, sort of looked very, very annoyed at yourself. But
yeah, it wasn't good. But certainly, yeah, that endgame it's very tricky when you look at certain endgames because computers will always say one side is winning by a big margin, but you're never really 100% sure. I think probably with perfect play it's a draw, but I don't think for a human it's realistic. I think that's probably like 95% of the time you're going to win that endgame with white if you play that on. So I mean, of course, it was a absolutely ridiculous decision by me, but it is what it is.
Right. So it's still looking great for Magnus. He still has to finish it off, though. He goes king c2. Like, he just always finds a way to slowly improve.
Yeah, I mean, king c2 is such a nasty move here because you're just sitting and waiting. I mean, what does black even do here? Like, there's like no good move. If you play rook g7, there's rook e6. If you go king g7, I think there's rook g1. I mean, it's just like, or king g7, rook f5 even. It's just horrible here. Yeah, I mean, Magnus is going to win this game, I think, very soon. King H7, probably, I would guess, Rook F5.
Or Rook E6 first, and you should win a second pawn.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Rook E6, Rook F8, Rook F5, King G6, Rook G5 should win. Yeah, should be pretty clean. Yeah, yep. It's not even close.
Do you think Jan, well, he's playing from Amsterdam, where earlier today he won the Levitov week? As you mentioned, there are so many players right now playing multiple tournaments at the same time. Do you think winning a tournament earlier in the day can give you a boost, or do you think the tiredness far outweighs?
I mean, I think when you're playing against Magnus specifically, it's going to be difficult. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult to find that extra boost, certainly. I mean, it can give you a boost, but I think when you're playing as absolute top players and you've been playing the whole day, it's going to be very difficult if you're playing Magnus. Maybe anybody else, it could be a little bit different, but specifically when you're playing Magnus, it's going to be very, very rough, I would say.
Yeah, and we see he's fighting on here.
I mean, Rook D5 and Rook G1 also just looks cleanly winning. And he plays it, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's just like, the problem is it's hopeless. Like, you're just much worse, and you're going to have to suffer. Although, wait, Rook H7...
It's not over just yet. But Hikaru, assuming Magnus wins this game with the white pieces, how do you think Jan is going to try to come back with white in the next game?
I mean, I think there's a good chance he's just going to lose. He's going to tilt and lose very quickly in the second game, if I'm being honest. Especially because he won the event, too. Like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I don't know what the... I don't know what the PR way of saying this is necessarily, but I think the thing is that when you win an event, it's very hard to then play a second event and actually care about it. And I think a good example is when Wesley So, he didn't win the event, but I think he had a big win in the Armageddon series before he played Magnus in the SEC later that evening. And then then after doing well in the Armageddon, when he played the SEC against Magnus, he just started playing like B3, all kinds of openings that were nothing like his normal repertoire, and he lost the match by a big margin. And so I think for like Nepo, it's going to be probably a very similar situation where if he loses, it's just going to be like, whatever, I'll play fast, do whatever, and see what happens, rather than trying to really treat it as a match format.
I totally get it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Especially when you're in Amsterdam, one of Europe's, very like nicest cities. I can imagine that Nepo's like, okay, I want to celebrate this win. But this game isn't over yet. Matsuchef chef in the chat is asking, any miracle save chances for Nepo?
I would guess, I mean, the problem is I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because even though Magnus has misplayed this, he's actually done this quite a few times against me too in over-the-board events, where even if he's misplayed a little bit, somehow he's able to reset and just continue to keep the pressure on, even after he knows that he's kind of missed a win. Like, he definitely has misplayed this. Like, he missed a win here, but he still has no risk, and he's still going to be very, very precise. So I don't really see it happening. And I think also the time situation is a huge problem as well. I think if Nepo had more time, I think maybe he would have better chances. But I think anytime you get an endgame like this against Magnus with limited time on the clock, it's just a nightmare. And the chances of survival, I think, are extremely low here.
Right. Yeah, he's just up a pawn with a dominant position. But yeah, I was just going to say, like, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I think after a tournament victory, you put all of your energy into that tournament, right? And then you win. And so you automatically, subconsciously relax, even if you don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt, that's definitely true. So yeah, I think what I would say is just it's very hard. And again, I mean, people can disagree with what I'm saying here, or my theory at least. But my general theory, as far as like the online events, very specifically the Chess Champion Tour events this year, and Magnus' seeming dominance over the last couple specifically, because I think the first two or three. He won the first one because he won the Armageddon against me in a very, very close. Was it the very first one, I think, where we had the match was tied 2-2, and then he won the Armageddon, so he stayed in the winners, and I went to the losers, and then I lost the final match in the finals against him, but that was very, very close. I think the second event, I beat Magnus, I believe, in the losers bracket, and then I beat Fabiano to win the event. But I think since then, I'm not sure if he's lost a match or if he's even had. Maybe he's had an Armageddon since then, but I feel like it's been very, very smooth sailing in the events he's played since the first two. And I also feel like the first two events, a lot of players did not have many tournaments around the start of the year. And now it's picked up, so everybody's playing in tournaments all over the place. So certainly I think that's played a big, big role.
Meanwhile, back in the game, what do you think? I mean, the game has progressed. I think maybe all of us thought Magnus would have won it by now already. What is the way to make progress here for White?
Is Rook F4? I'm trying to figure out if Rook F4, Rook 5 F4 is bad with the idea of Rook G1. I mean, I guess the idea is if you go Rook 5 F4, there's still Rook G1 to stop it. But my assumption, King E4 is a nice move too to intend to play Rook G3. But see, the problem, I'll tell you what's going to happen. At some point, Nepo is going to have to go H4 to stop Rook G3. That's going to fix the pawn on a dark square. Or maybe he doesn't have to do it yet. But eventually, Magnus is somehow going to he's going to force the pawn. He's going to reach an endgame where the rooks are going to come off, but he's just completely winning because of the pawn structure and the bishops are the same colors. What I expect here. Now, King D5 also is a very, very nasty move. I don't know if he's going to find it, but I sort of expect Magnus to play King D5 here.
What's the idea behind King D5?
Just walk the king to E6 and play Rook F7. I think it's actually very, very basic. I mean, once you see with the computer, of course, it's super, super simple. Whoa, Rook G3?
Thunder! Okay. I mean, I guess he's still doing very well, but yeah, that definitely gives up a lot of the advantage.
Well, the reason that I don't like this is can't Nepo now go... He's going to be able to set up the pawns on the light squares. He's going to get C6, D5. And then with the pawns all in the opposite color of the bishop, this endgame is not going to be easy to win. Not easy to win at all, actually, because then his pawns from B2 to D4 are on the dark squares as well.
Right.
Yeah,
so
like
now
if
I
you go
guess
C6
C6. Yeah, like C6 stopped the king from walking up, and I assume Magnus will still find a way, but like right now there's real work to be done. I think the idea that you mentioned earlier looked great with King D5, King E6, and it just feels like it's a walk in the park.
I mean, like a big question is here, let's say D5, Bishop F4, Rook E7, Rook E3, Rook takes E3, whether that's a winning endgame. And I don't think it is with the structure of all the black pawns being on the light squares. So that's why I think this is going to be very difficult. I mean, Magnus can still probably go like Rook F1, B4, Rook B1, and B5 or something. A5, interesting. That's not a move that I like at all.
It's fixing all of the pawns on the dark squares, and like you said, I mean, it's a good question whether that endgame wins or not. I mean, maybe after that trade you go like King F3 and then G4 and then recapture with the king. That should be winning, right?
Probably.
So let's have a look. So let's say Bishop D8 here. So let's say we trade. You go B4. Let's say the king goes here. We go King F3. We go King F5. I guess that's important.
I'm very unconvinced that this endgame is winning. I don't know what Magnus is doing.
But this one feels
really
like
bizarre.
Because I thought like if you can get it, I think this one is winning though. This one's pretty clear. But can you get there? Like let's say black sits.
But yeah, I mean this is just insane. Yeah, this is completely insane. I don't know what Magnus is doing. I actually have no idea. Yeah, this is just bizarre.
King F3, King F5 now. Wait, what is going on? Like, so Hikaru, we were asking you earlier, like, how do you estimate the chance of Magnus not winning this endgame? Like, what percentage would you assign to what's happening right now?
I mean, I would have given it like I would have thought like 90% Magnus wins, and now it's just going to be a draw. It's just, and the thing is, Nepo can't go wrong because you just wait with the bishop. The pawns are on the opposite color, so there's no way for Nepo to make a blunder here. Yeah, I'm really confused. I'm really, really confused by what Magnus is doing.
Do you think he just got careless, or what do you think happened?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you want my hot take, I would say it feels like he threw this on purpose. He threw this away. That's how bad it is. Obviously he didn't, jokes aside, but yeah, I mean, it's just, I really have no words for it. It's that bad.
Throwing for content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even understand. I just don't understand it. It's just not, yeah, it's just very, very strange.
And when you see something like this happening, don't you think like, why doesn't he do this against me?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, you think that for sure. But yeah, it's just very, very strange. I'm really just confused. I don't understand this at all. I mean, again, me it's just weird. But it also speaks back to something I said yesterday, where people were kind of like not believing what I said. But I do feel like at various times, Magnus sometimes does get careless. Sometimes his form isn't always there. And this is an end game where I think, I mean, if this is over the board, he in like a serious event, he probably just wins this. But it's going to be a draw now. It's just going to be a draw.
How do you feel? What is your estimate of how Magnus deals with it's not the end of the world, but it's a disappointment to not convert. Do you think he's good at shrugging these off, or he sometimes struggles?
I mean, I think generally he's pretty good at shrugging it off. Not always, of course, but I think in general he's very good. That's one of the things that separates him as well. Is he's mentally he's generally very, very focused and able to sort of move past various games, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss. Specifically when he loses, he tends to come back very strong. So I think Magnus's mental abilities are really, really good to avoid it. But I think he's going to be upset. Like, I think at the end of this game, he is not going to be happy.
Right.
Because I do expect that after the game ends, probably assuming he doesn't just get it from his chair right away, within the next like 25 to 30 seconds, I do expect him to throw his hand up like, what's going on? We'll see if I'm right at, but I expect some sort of reaction in like 25 to 30 seconds after the game is drawn.
Right. So let's see. Has the other game between let me have a very quick look. Has the other game already started? Okay, the other game has already ended in a draw between MVL and Czech.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just shocked by Rook G3. It's such a bad move. I mean, it's such a bad move from Magnus.
Yeah.
I have no words for it. It's just that bad. Really, really surprising.
We still see him trying. He's trying to open up on the queen side. Like maybe you go like bishop b4 and bishop b7, but I don't see a good way. It goes b6, but I don't see a good way to get the king in.
Yeah, I think Black just waits. I don't think there is any way in. Black just keeps waiting on the diagonal. Unless there's some way to go bishop f4. But no, I just wait with bishop. I just make sure that I wait with bishop g5
bishop
or
f4
f8.
is a good way to try to lose after. Although I don't think you actually do, but you do allow bishop e4.
Yeah. No, but probably after bishop f4, you can also just go bishop f8. And then whenever the king gets to tries to get in, you cut it off on d6 or h6.
So I guess he wants to do this, like check, king up, and then go g5. So maybe Nepo, has to sit with a move like bishop f6.
It's a good move too.
Hikaru,
there's just no way. Bishop g5. I mean, just no chance.
A question. Someone was saying in the chat, the bright side, well, at least from Hikaru's viewing standpoint, is if Nepo keeps this close, Magnus cannot play Title Tuesday. What are your thoughts? Do you like it when Magnus joins, or do you not care?
I mean, I think it's. I mean, I obviously it's for content, so I think anytime Magnus joins, it's great for the event. He has not been playing as much recently. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think that he'll probably play Title Tuesday, especially since he's not going to win this match easily. I think if he was going to win this match like 2.5, like if he were to win this game and just steamroll Nepo, I think there's a pretty decent chance he would play. I don't really expect him to play because this doesn't look like it's going to be the short 3 game match that maybe it looked like it would be earlier. So I doubt it, but I always enjoy it when Magnus plays. I mean, sure, maybe it makes my chance of winning the event a little bit lower, but in general, I mean, it's still great whenever he plays.
Right. And do you think him throwing this game is also due to fatigue?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as I said, I feel like Magnus, I know he played this opening very, very well, but I didn't feel like he played great against me yesterday. I feel like again today he's not playing amazing chess either. Yeah. Okay, Magnus just gets up though, right? Or is he going to get up from his chair?
Okay, so let's see if we get the reaction. Oh, Nepo's laughing.
Yeah, here's the
He's like, what was
look.
that?
Yeah, here's a confused look from Magnus. I'm just waiting to see if he's looking at the game.
He's gonna pop up the game. He sees he was +3, and then he's gonna like.
Let's see. I'm just waiting to see if there's a reaction.
Nepo is just straight up laughing.
Yeah.
Nepo probably also says he was just dead lost.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if there's a reaction from Magnus, because he's definitely looking at the game right now. He's definitely looking at the game. And I'm just waiting for like a hand toss or like a furrowed brow or something like that. So I'm sure he's looking at the game.
Yeah, I think there was a very mild sign of just like he kind of just huffed and puffed a bit, but it was very toned down, which makes me think Magnus must also, be at least a little bit tired. It's been a busy period for him as well.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, do you see he just did that whole, he did shake his head a little bit right there before turning off the cam. Yeah. So, yeah. There was a little bit. There was a little bit there. You saw him like shake his head. So yeah, I mean, I think Magnus also is tired, but that's the thing. Like for the players, it's very, very difficult too to sort of decide which events matter, which events don't matter. It's just very tough because there's so much chess going on everywhere these days. And I mean, you could say that's a good thing on the one hand for the pros because they make more money. I think financially, Fabiano spoke about it recently, where Fabiano was saying he's having probably his best year, or financially it's better than most other years. So there is that, but on the other hand, the quality of chess, I think, has definitely decreased just because of all the over-the-board events, all the online events, everyone trying to maximize their earnings. And so, I mean, there are pluses and minuses for sure. And I think, I mean, obviously the money doesn't matter to Magnus at all, but I think certainly his play also has some dips as well. It's just that even when his play dips, it's still better than most people's, unless they're at their absolute best.
Hikaru,
no,
we
for
have
sure.
10 minutes until the next game. Usually when you're not here, we go on break. I don't know. You just joined us recently. What you want to do?
We can go on break. That's fine. I don't mind. We can go on break. There's no big deal.
Okay,
fantastic.
Well,
you know, since it's your stream, you know, like we often announce a break. Why don't you announce a break, Hikaru?
All right, everybody. So I guess we're going to go on a break and we'll be back in like 5 or 6 minutes and we'll keep the show rolling along. So we'll see you guys very, very soon.